guest in here. Mark, can you hear us?
Yes. How are we doing, guys?
We're doing great, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us today. We truly appreciate it. I know you've been a busy man on the road, going down. I believe you were at the Elite 11, checking all that out. Give us an update on what you saw and what stood out to you watching those quarterbacks.
Yeah, I was down for about a week and a half down in Georgia and Florida. I was able to get the Georgia Elite 11 regional. Aaron Noland, Ohio State commit, was tremendous. Got his invite to the finals. Accurate, arm strength, mechanics. I always kind of laugh. Every time I see a lefty throw, it looks weird to me, but with him, it doesn't look as weird to me. It just it's really short delivery and spins it, and just kind of the way the ball kind of jumps out of his hand is really pretty. Obviously, Jaden Davis was their Michigan commit, so that was kind of the story of the day, was watching those two guys battle. Jaden, I assume, is going to get his Elite 11 finals invite at some point, but Noland was the only one to get it that day. And then Juju Lewis, 2026 out of Carrollton. That I don't know if I would go this far, but I had someone at the camp kind of tell me, like, that's what a first overall pick looks like when they're a sophomore in high school.
Wow.
Like, oh, okay. But yeah, he's special. I mean, he really can really throw it. Big time arm, accuracy, spin, just all the tools. He's probably only about 6'1" right now. I think that's the only knock on him, is he's not super tall, but he's still a puppy, so he could grow another inch or two. But he's kind of the guy who's getting that. He's like the Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, same part of the country, and he's getting, like, everyone down there is like, this is the next guy. So he's got offers from everybody already. So it was good to see him again. I had seen him in late February, I think.
Wow.
Who would your comparison be to Aaron Noland of players you've seen, like, out there? I mean, you've seen him live. That's why it's different watching film than seeing him play live.
Yeah, it's interesting because he is very, just the left-handed component makes it very hard to get a great comparison. I would say I would take maybe a couple pieces from a couple different people's games. Mentally, the maturity, the leadership, kind of the way he kind of has the respect of everybody, he reminds me a little bit of Jalen Hurts. Is he going to be as physical, as good of a runner as Jalen? Probably not. But that's kind of the first guy he reminds me of when you talk to him. From a physical standpoint, it's hard. It's hard to think of a guy who's, again, left-handed, a little bit mobile. He's not Tim Tebow.
That would be cool if he was.
It's really kind of difficult to find a great comparison. But
Mark Brunell. I mean, granted, I'm aging myself quite a bit when I drop his name out there.
Right? Could Brunell move like that? I don't know. Yeah. It's just it's really like I said, Jalen Hurts is the one that comes back to me just because of the way he carries himself. But there also is some similarities in the build. Like, when he gets into a college program, he's going to be a big, strong kid, just like Jalen is. He's just left-handed. It's so that's kind of my best comparison at the moment.
Nice. I want to jump back a little bit and talk about, we've been talking a little bit about, the 2023 season today. And I want to go back to this 2023 class for the Buckeyes. I know this may be back in the memory banks, but I want to talk about some of these kids that Ohio State brought in. Obviously we've seen some of the wide receivers, transfer the last few weeks and get out of Dodge because of, obviously, there's only so many snaps to go around. And it sounds to me like some of these kids in the 2023 class are impressing them. Obviously, Carnell Tate, I think he showed up pretty good at spring practice. But who, in your mind, is going to have an immediate impact for the Buckeyes this season from that 2023 class? And who do you think is most ready to play, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely hit on Carnell Tate. As I've said before with him, you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube at this point. I don't care who was out this spring for them and who wasn't. Emeka Ibuka wasn't out there. Julian Fleming wasn't really out there. It doesn't matter at this point. The way he played in the spring, you can't now relegate him to the bench. So he's going to play. Even though he's coming in late, I usually don't like guys coming in late. It's difficult, but I think Brandon Innes will work his way into the rotation. He's physically ready. And he just got up there, I think like a week or two ago. So he's now in the program, and I know he's been working hard down in Florida. I think he had the playbook and everything. So he's been, putting in the preparation. So I think it's gonna be hard to keep him off the field. Then it gets interesting. I like their offensive line class. It's hard for me to see those guys getting out there early. I think it'd have to be a real disaster up front for that to happen. It's just hard for the young linemen. There's a couple guys I like. Again, it's not easy when you don't enroll early, but Caden McDonald's a guy who comes in with some size. I think they're looking for that 4th and 5th kind of defensive tackle in the rotation. Can he get to that point quickly? We'll see. I certainly I love Jelani Thurman.
Yeah,
they have so many tight ends. I don't know how much real time he's going to get, but he's definitely going to be a guy who plays. Big time tight end. He's probably the best tight end prospect they've landed in a long time. I haven't seen a freshman tight end come in the program like that. Not even Jeremy Rucker. Jeremy wasn't really physically ready like Jelani is. Jermaine Matthews gets in there at corner. I know they really like him. I think he could earn some time. And I look again, another receiver is Noah Rogers is in there early too, made a play in the spring game. And again, it's gonna be hard to get all these receivers in, but I could see Noah, possibly getting in there and getting some reps as well. But it's a good class. They got a bunch of guys in there early, and they got a couple summer guys that are going to be pretty good. Jason Moore from DeMath is a guy who's physically ready, but is he going to be able to crack, pretty deep defensive line rotation? Yeah,
no, there's no doubt. And just to follow up on that, the Buckeyes were way more active, in my opinion, in the portal this offseason. I mean, they went out. We were just talking about Notre Dame. They went out and got Lorenzo Styles. They went out and obviously the big one to me was Jihad Carter from Syracuse and bringing him in to help in the secondary. And then, Davison, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name, but the corner from Ole Miss.
Igbinison, yes.
Thank you. I didn't want to butcher it, so I appreciate you throwing it out.
I may have, but no, I think I got it down. It took me all spring, but I think I got it down.
No, that sounded way better than what I was going to throw out. But they got him. I believe they got another lineman. I mean, talk to me a little bit about any of these portal guys. I believe they got a D tackle from Ole Miss too, if my memory serves me correct. Malone, I think is his name. Any of these guys from the portal you think might be able to come in and help with depth and get on the field quick?
Yeah, so I thought Davison Igbinison was maybe their second or third best corner in spring. I think he's going to play a lot. Jihad Carter's going to play. Are either of them going to start is kind of the $1 million question. Unfortunately, Carter had a bit of a knee tweak there midway through spring, and so his spring got cut a little short. But he'll be fine for fall camp. But they'll definitely play. It's just a matter of will they crack that basically a 5-man secondary, starting secondary, and we'll see. I think Davison's going to play a lot though, and I think Carter's going to play a lot. And then you got the other two guys. Tywone Malone was kind of brought in as like a bridge guy. So I don't expect a ton out of him this year, maybe the 4th or 5th defensive tackle in the rotation. But I think what that was mainly was he's got I think 3 years to play 3. He's got a few years of eligibility here. And look, Michael Hall could be a 3 and done.
Yeah.
Tyleik Williams could be a 3 and done. I think Ty Hamilton has like a COVID year, but does Ty Hamilton say, I'm just going to take my crack? So I think they're protecting there against losing 2 or 3 guys early, essentially, to the NFL at defensive tackle. So that was a huge get for them for their long-term depth. And I think Malone, again, could maybe crack the back end of the defensive tackle rotation this year. With Lorenzo Styles Jr., I love the pickup. I don't know, like from my standpoint, he's kind of making a position change. Now he's played corner his entire high school career, but he's basically making a position change. He's got 3 years to play 2. So he has a redshirt year. My sense on that is even if he gets into a couple games in like garbage time, is that they're going to protect his redshirt and they're just going to use this year to develop him so that he can help them next year when in real minutes. I don't know that it would be surprising to me. It would not only be a little damning to their other corners if he was able to kind of jump right in this year, it would also be pretty amazing on his end if he was able to do that. So I think he's kind of a stash for a year, redshirt, and then you get 2 years out of him.
Nice.
How much more portal work do you think Ohio State's going to do, especially at the tackle position after losing Jones and Johnson? I mean, you bring in Cutler, you bring in Simmons from San Diego State, but I have to imagine they've got to create more depth there because that was a problem area even last year. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, and that was, we got to get to those guys too. I mean, the problem with the tackle situation is it's really, you can find running backs, even like corners and receivers. There's like so many of those guys. There's so many like 6-foot athletes out there that can run. There's so many of those guys out there. You can go to the portal and you can get guys there. Who's losing a 6'6", 300-pound offensive tackle that can play? I mean, those guys aren't leaving Alabama and Georgia, so you're hoping maybe like someone fell through the cracks in the recruiting process and like blossomed somewhere, and you can steal them from like a MAC school or a mid-major.
Yeah,
and those are just really hard to find. And they found one in Simmons, but I think they would add one if they could find one. I just don't know that there's going to be one out there. I mean, they were in on a few other tackles earlier in the portal season, and you're very rarely going to get a sure thing there. I mean, even the guys they were looking at who, were Power 5 guys like Walter Rouse, he's coming off an injury. I mean, he hadn't particularly played better later in his career than he did earlier in his career. You have other guys. Are they tackles? Can they play? Can they play at this level? So you just have so many questions you have to answer at that position. So I think they're probably done this offseason with that, barring a surprise entry. Like something weird would have to happen where someone becomes available who's not available right now.
I think as you look back at it, I mean, outside of Olatimi out of Virginia going to Michigan, I mean, there's been very little in the transfer portal on the offensive line. Everybody comes in, they stay put.
Yeah, but there's just, look, everyone, I don't think there's a team in the country that's like, yeah, we couldn't use another great offensive tackle. I think it's just there's so few of them in existence that when you have one, you make sure you keep them, and they're not sitting on your bench somewhere. I mean, no franchise tackle is sitting on a bench anywhere. That's just not happening. And so again, you have to find them. You have to get that 2 or 3 star kid that fell through the cracks, that was maybe really raw in high school and found his way to, Florida Atlantic or Kent State or something. And boom, oh my gosh, this guy's really good. And you kind of steal him that way. But because otherwise those guys don't leave the big programs.
Yeah. And that being said, if they are done, what's your, take on the status of this offensive line? I mean, obviously losing Paris Johnson Jr. and losing DeJuan Jones the same year would affect any team, but this team in particular, I mean, it's hard to really tell anything from a spring game, but I've watched some practice tape, and it's hard for me to get a read on what this offensive line is going to look like. Do you think this is a spot of weakness, I guess, for this team?
It's my single biggest concern for this team. If you tell me right now what could derail Ohio State this year from being a playoff team, it's the offensive line. It's actually not the quarterback situation to me. I think if they protect whoever the quarterback's going to be, that they'll be just fine with the weapons they have, that you can plug and play a lot of good quarterbacks in there and that they'll be just fine. I did not like what I saw out of the offensive line. I was at 5 or 6 practices. None of them, there were times I came away, well, that wasn't too bad, but there was not a day I came away saying, oh, they were really good on the offensive line today. And now part of that, they have really good defensive ends. And I know that people are expecting more out of these guys. And like JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer. I know people are like waiting for them to kind of take the next leap. I think that defensive line is going to be the thing that really takes a big leap. So I think part of that is, experienced defensive line beating young, inexperienced offensive line that's still trying to piece itself together. And defense is generally ahead of the offense in spring anyway. So I think there's some of that we can kind of sit back on and make an excuse or two and kind of wait and see what things look like in August. And obviously Simmons wasn't out there. But yeah, it's my biggest concern. And I think if if you can plug in Simmons there, whether it's at right tackle or left tackle, I would just keep him at right tackle. I would not even. They've had Josh Fryer at left all spring. They're probably been their best lineman. I would just leave Fryer at left tackle instead of moving him back to where he was and trying to put Simmons at left when he played right at San Diego State. I would just kind of put Simmons at right, Fryer at left. I think they'll figure out the interior. I'm a little concerned about center, but their guards will be fine. And so once this all is pieced together and we can get a look at it in August, I may feel better, but right now that's definitely my biggest concern.
Well, one question I've got for you, because, and Nate's going to freaking hate me for asking this, is you look at Brian Hartline's recruiting capability, which is, calling it legendary would be saying mildly. You put him in the Tim Brewster, Larry Johnson category. Look at what he has done developing receivers. When is he going to get that head coaching job? Because when that Cincinnati,
no, it's not. Come on.
I know, but especially within this new realm of how NIL is. He fits even more perfect. And when the Cincinnati job came open, I'm like, man, that's like a perfect fit. He knows Ohio. He grew up here. And they went with Satterfield. I get it because of experience standpoint, but what are your thoughts? Bringing a couple X's. I don't know what he is on X's and O's because he blows it away so much on recruiting. You don't get to hear about the X's and O's side. What are your thoughts?
Well, I would say this to start. If this offensive coordinator experiment works out for him, that kind of takes him into the stratosphere.
Yeah.
If he comes out this year and is actually the primary play caller and their offense continues to produce the level it's been producing, you'll start to hear the old, he's the next Lincoln Riley. You will start to hear Lincoln Riley stuff around him.
Yeah.
That being said, he's got a little bit of Luke Fickell in him. Fickell stayed at Ohio State probably damn near a decade longer than we thought he would. I don't think Hartline's going to jump at Akron or even like a Toledo. I don't think he's going to do that. I think he will wait for a Power 5 opportunity where he really, and not just he's not going to go and try and, revive Vanderbilt or something.
I was just going to say that too as well.
Like, he's not going to take a job where he's bringing a knife to a gunfight. So it's going to depend kind of what becomes available over the next few years. And again, how this OC thing goes, because again, the one thing that I think people would be hesitant about is like, okay, and I know people are going to say, well, Urban Meyer was never a coordinator, and that's true. But a lot of these teams are going to want you to at least have some coordinator experience.
Yeah.
And so if this does go well for him, it does kind of take him even higher into the realm of a desirable head coaching candidate.
Yeah, God, let's hope that doesn't happen. I do want the offense to do well.
That's the catch-22 because you want this to work if you're an Ohio State fan. But if it works too well, it could speed up the process with Hartline.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But it was kind of weird to me watching the spring game, and it's a spring game, so it obviously means nothing. But it was weird to me watching the dynamic of who was calling the plays. It kind of looked like Hartline was calling them, but Day was watching him over his shoulder. It just kind of seemed weird to me. So I hope that's not a problem, and I that's definitely something to look at, and it's something that's worrying me, just like the offensive line.
Well, there's no question. Like, Ryan Day is not going to, as much as he says he's going to back off a little bit. When it comes crunch time, he's going to be involved. His input is going to be given in play calling and key decisions and key situations. He's always going to be an offensive guy at heart. So he's going to be involved with quarterback development. He's going to be involved in play calling, and it's just finding some chemistry there. And that's what spring's for. I think everyone, was kind of watching certain things and expecting it to be just a perfect, well-oiled machine. I'm like, guys, they've been doing this for like a month. Like, this is going to take some time. They're going to do some more scrimmages in fall camp and continue to kind of figure this out. And so, yeah, that's going to be important, finding a balance there, and Ryan Day, especially, finding a balance between, making sure, look, Ryan Day's a really good offensive mind. Yeah. So you do want his input, but it's just kind of how to give it, when to give it, that type of thing. And they'll work that out.
How much have you watched have you seen any live work with Jeremiah Smith or Mylan Graham at all?
Yes, I've seen a lot of. I just saw Jeremiah this past week, and I saw Milan a couple weeks ago at the Under Armour camp. But I've seen a ton of Jeremiah. I've seen him at several camps. I've been to the school 3 or 4 times the last 15 months. Saw him play against American Heritage last year in the fall. Jeremiah is as good of a receiver prospect as I've ever seen.
If you would compare him to who would you throw him out there as a comparison to?
Like Julio Jones.
Wow.
Wow.
He's big, fast, strong, catches everything. I literally can't find a weakness in his game. It's crazy. I'm always the guy who can find something in somebody where it's like, guys, calm down with the hype. He's got to do this better. He's got to work on this. He is. It's real. It's like impossible to find a weakness in his game from work ethic and personality all the way to physical traits, to skills, to everything else. He is like right out of a lab. It's exactly how you build a wide receiver.
I mean, it's kind of funny because I'm sitting there thinking about past Ohio State receivers that were that big and physical. I mean, you got to go back to David Boston.
Yep.
I mean, granted, he got super big when he got to the pros. But I mean,
too big.
Yeah, too big. That was like freakishly big. But yeah, so you think, wow, that's interesting. You add that mix to that combination. Wow.
What do you think, Mark, about him? I mean, obviously he's committed to Ohio State, but we've seen people, drop commitments before. What do you think about him? Now that we're talking about him, let's just go ahead and hit this. What do you think about him and the rest of his recruiting? Do you think he's going to stay the course? He's obviously going to make some more visits. Talk to us about your thoughts on him for actually signing the paper.
He's going to give Ohio State fans anxiety because that's what Ohio State fans do when one of their commits is taking other visits. If Brian Hartline is there, I would, and I don't see why he wouldn't be at this point. I just don't think this offseason is going to be the right time for that. If Hartline's there, there's like zero chance he doesn't go to Ohio State. That's really the bottom line with Jeremiah. So I don't think there's anything to worry about. He's been upfront with Ohio State about this. I've talked to him about it several times. We did a big 10-minute interview the other day, and he said, look, there's nothing to worry about. He's like, I'm just, he saw Brandon Innes commit to Oklahoma last year or 2 years ago, and then Lincoln Riley bolted. And I think he's just, hey, if something happens with Brian Hartline, let me make sure I've done my homework on a couple of these other schools that I like to make a decision in the event that would happen. But and Ohio State's fine with it. Even the people I talked to at Ohio State who are normally like super like edgy when this stuff happens, they're like, we're fine. So I don't think anyone's concerned about it at this point, and I fully expect him to sign with Ohio State.
Wow. How's Travion Henderson's health right now?
Good, I think. Everything looks good. He was doing some side work. Obviously, they held him out of spring, kind of a load management deal, but was working on the side, was kind of doing some drill work and stuff on the side, and looked fine to me. Everything I've heard is that he's going to be 100% ready to go. Fall camp opens.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that's huge. The offense kept moving, but to me, the biggest thing that stunted, the overall progress of this team and potentially playing for a national championship and winning it was Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson being absent. That to me, you could have run the clock out in that game. We had so many. There's so many things we could. I'm not even going to talk about the game because it'll make me barf. But that there was so many things there. But missing those two guys to me was the biggest thing. But I do want to talk a little bit more about the 2024 class. There's been some pretty good work done. I like this class overall. I like a lot of these players that I'm looking at. Some of the guys that we've mentioned, some of the guys that we haven't. But James Peoples, the running back, Nolan, we already talked about, Smith, Stover. These guys, the guy that's right over here near me is, the tight end LeBlanc out of Baylor. I like this class overall, and I like the Armstrong kids out of St. Edward. But to me, what is your overall feel for this 2024 class? And do you see them potentially bringing any other big names in? I know they're still in the business for Micah Hudson and KJ Bolden, but do you see them potentially being able to steal any of these other big name guys in this class?
Yeah, so I think the big focus right now is locking up this defense. One guy I really like where things are going right now is Kingston Viliamuasa, the linebacker out of St. John Bosco in California. I think that's an Ohio State Notre Dame battle right now, and I think Ohio State's doing a great job there. I think one of the big things to watch is that safety position right now. So KJ Bolden, obviously, as you mentioned, committed to Georgia, is deciding between like Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, Alabama. Peyton Woodyard is committed to Georgia, and he's from Bosco. So if I think the dominoes could fall in such a way where if Ohio State misses out on Bolden, but Bolden goes to Georgia, that Ohio State could end up flipping Woodyard from Georgia because Georgia's taking like 1 million safeties in this class. And I think something's going to have to give there. And Woodyard has visited Ohio State in the spring. He's going to come back for an official in June. And if they get his teammate, William Muasa, they're pretty close. And again, if Bolden goes, so this is kind of the weird thing. If you're an Ohio State fan, if you don't get KJ Bolden, you don't want him to go to Alabama. You want him to go to Georgia. Yeah. Because that could, it would feel to me like Ohio State has a really, really good chance to get one of Bolden or Woodyard. I don't think getting both is really on the table, but again, I think they have a decent chance of getting one, because if they don't get Bolden, I really think they could flip Woodyard.
I just got to give you credit on nailing those South Pacific names, because even you watch TV, you got people still have a problem with, and I do too, DJ Ungalele. And it was just funny. It was like you rattled off and there was like no tension in your face whatsoever. You got you nailed it cold. And I'm like, holy crap. That's good.
I've known Kingston since he was like a freshman. So it's like 3 years of practice there. Almost. So,
Still, that was very good. I was impressed too.
We get that many vowels in a row. I just kind of like your brain starts spinning. The hamster goes off the rails and
Yes. I probably, pronounced JT's during his recruiting process. I probably pronounced JT's last name about 5 different ways, because you get started and then you're like, oh God, like your whole brain gets scrambled. You're like, did I say that right? Because you got to remember, like the E sounds like an I and the I sounds like an E, and it just like, oh my goodness. So.
Well, hey, I'm glad you brought him up. Actually, I know we got to get you out of here, but I do want to talk about him. The Penn State game, that to me was what I envisioned him doing, all season. He didn't have a bad year by any stretch of the imagination. The Northwestern game, he played very well as well, in my opinion. But the Penn State game to me was like, this is what I thought this guy was going to be. Just talk to me a little bit about him. You already mentioned a little bit about the DNs, and obviously they're getting better. But I think this is the guy. I like Jack Sawyer, but JTT to me is the one that I think can be close to potentially a Chase Young kind of game record. You agree with me on that, or am I crazy?
Well, yeah. Anytime you show the things he showed against Penn State, you can see what he's capable of. And that's, the offensive line's kind of been my big thing this spring, but the other thing I've said a lot is like, look, these guys got to stop flashing. Like, it's time to go out there every Saturday and do what you're capable of doing. And I say that about both JT and Jack Sawyer. Everyone got on Jack, I think, more than JT. I really think JT's Penn State game saved him from a lot of criticism, because Jack Sawyer led the team in sacks last year. Like, that's a trivia question. I think even 90% of Ohio State fans would fail. Yeah. But Jack didn't have that one incredible game. So I think he takes a little bit more of the flack than JT does from the fan base. But the fact of the matter is, if this team wants to win a national championship, if they want to have a top 5 defense, those guys have to bring it every Saturday. We can't be talking about, the flashing and this is, that was incredible. And then next week we don't hear their name called very much. And quite frankly, Kenyatta Jackson is going to push them if they don't perform every week. Kenyatta Jackson's had an unbelievable spring. And so they're going to get some push from him and Caden Curry. And so that's to me is kind of the key of the defense, is because I think the secondary will be better, especially because it's going to be healthier, we would assume. And we know the linebackers will be solid because they have experience and they have some depth there now too. But it's if they want to be national championship caliber, those 5-star defensive ends need to play that way.
One last question, and it can be really quick. We talked about Juju Lewis to start off the show. Do you expect his recruitment to be kind of on that same level as Quinn Ewers, where it's just crazy, like it gets almost rock star-ish S quality?
Yeah, I mean, he'll be probably, I don't think the 26 rankings have come out anywhere yet, but when they do, he'll probably be like 1 or 2 in the country. And he's got Ohio State and Alabama, and he's got all these, USC. He's got all
the normal players,
all the big national programs, and all the big quarterback factories have offered him. He visited Ohio State in the spring. That's going to be the next, big recruitment I think everyone follows, and that everyone is kind of, and I think what will make it even more interesting is he's got, much like Quinn and much like Justin Fields, he doesn't really do a lot. You kind of have to get him in person if you want to talk to him. He's not a kid who's like answering every phone call about wanting and every text about interview requests. So, and I guess Arch Manning was like this too. There's going to be some mystery to it, because he's not going to tell you everything he's thinking, and he's not going to do every interview, and he's not going to be out there in the media a lot. So there's going to be some mystery to it too. So I think it's going to be one that a lot of people pay attention to.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. But, I think if as long as we keep Hartline and James doesn't sell him to some team for us.
Sorry.
I think you want him to go to Minnesota and come help your Gophers out. But
hey,
we're not giving
PJ's
him
doing well.
But anyway,
Mark, I think
thank
PJ
you
does
so
a great
much,
job in Minnesota. I think he does. I think, look, that is not an easy job.
No.
You have to recruit. You have to either find a lot of gems, or you got to recruit national. I mean, it's not one of the easier jobs in the conference. I think he's got them in a good spot. I think he does a great job.
He finds guys that fit his program. Like, you have to have a certain type of mindset to play for PJ, which is kind of, I've always said, kind of like the same type of guy that would go into the military.
He's nuts. He's like Urban. He's nuts.
Yeah. No, that's spot on. Yeah.
Well, he actually has to develop players, which, some of these schools have just taken a pass on that. They recruit kids that are ready to go, or they find them in the portal and they don't even try and develop anymore. But he actually does a good job making guys better, from year one.
No doubt.
So, well, Mark, hey, thank you so much for joining us, man. We appreciate it. We loved hearing some of your knowledge today and getting your thoughts on some of this stuff. We really, really appreciate it. Hopefully sometime we can get you back on and talk a little bit more.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, guys.